Hello and welcome to the Power of Integrity podcast, where leadership aligns with principles. I'm Ralph Adamo. I'm so happy to have Doug Wilson here. Doug is a co-founder of the National Talent Collaborative. He also co-founded CLA, which stands for CEO Leadership Alliance, and today he also serves on the board. Doug, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here today, Ralph.
Absolutely. And if you could kind of share with our group a little bit about your personal and professional journey that's led to where you are today, the things that have been kind of those mile markers along the way in your path, professionally and personally, and also then give our audience a little bit about National Talent Collaborative as well as CLA, since they kind of go hand in glove.
Happy to do that. So I'll take you back to college. I was in a course on industrial psychology, it was called, freshman year. Texas Instruments came in and made a beautiful presentation on how they were creating beautiful pathways for workers to find more meaning in their work and also higher productivity. And they got the two together. And that really excited me. And I said, that's what I'm going to do in life. I want to work and helping to bring out the very best in people in workplaces. And so that's where I started to gravitate toward. And on that path, I did two things. One is I had a deep religious experience in college as well. And I actually went to seminary for 4 years, not planning to be a minister. I still wanted to do the psychology working in organizations. But I wanted to dive deep into what it meant to live out a life that I believed in very deeply and how I could understand the principles of what that meant. Then I went on and got a PhD in psychology, began being mentored by some of the very best people in America on what it meant to build great organizations. Began working with CEOs, then teaching at USC as well at the Graduate School of Business in organizational behavior, and working in companies, helping CEOs live out what you would say lives of integrity, lives of where their values meet reality and the decisions you have to make when it bumps into reality that can be very difficult. And that's where I spent my life. And as a result of that, we really came out with a core belief that business has two responsibilities. One is an economic responsibility to give a return to the shareholders. The other is a social responsibility to give a return to the customer, give a return to your community, to live with purpose. To live with a greater purpose than just return to your shareholders for money. And if you live with that greater purpose, you actually end up giving a greater return to your shareholders because you're aligned with what will make for a great business, because you're aligned with your stakeholders that need to trust you, be loyal to you, believe in you. And that became foundational for my life. And so in that, we pulled together the CEO Leadership Alliance, finding purposeful leaders who wanted to make a difference in their communities as well as their companies. And we said, let's work together rather than separately. Because if we work separately, we are not as strong. But if we work together, we are even stronger. So that became the foundation for the CEO Leadership Alliance Orange County, that I happened to pull that together with Dick Gottenauer, who was a former CEO from Chicago. He retired out here. He became a best friend. And together, the two of us were able to pull that together. And now we are working on a national level, doing this with 30 different markets, 1,500 CEOs from around the country. Jamie Dimon is a part of it. Penny Pritzker is a part of it. We have amazing people committed to these values and living those out in their community.
Doug, that's a fantastic story. There is so much meat you hung on the bone there. I was taking notes along the way. Meaning and productivity, values meeting reality, economic and social requirements, and to live a life of purpose. You have condensed all of the things that this show has been about into just a 3-minute conversation and narrative. I want to explore some of that with you, and I'd love to dive into it. So as we pivot to the topic of integrity, let me just ask that question basically for Doug Wilson. What does the word integrity mean to you?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, and it's been fun to have to reflect on this prior to this podcast, because you sent some questions over, and that was one of them. And, you know, I'm troubled today because integrity is being defined as alignment between what I think, what I say, and what I do. You know what the problem with that is? A mafia boss has alignment between what he thinks, what he says, and what he does. I don't like you. I'm going to kill you. And yes, I just did it. Does that have integrity? No, that doesn't have integrity. If you want to have a very broad definition, you could call that integrity, that he means what he says and he says what he does. But he does what he says, rather. Get that right. Yeah. That's not integrity. I think our country, our nation is built on integrity. The Pilgrims wanted to live a life of integrity. They could not live that life in England. They risked everything to come to America, where they could live free, where they could live with their beliefs and live it honestly and live it openly. That was integrity. And they risked everything. And their life was based on deep moral values. And when you look at cultures, all of our cultures have some forms of integrity, some higher than others. But you look at America, America was built on the foundations of integrity, especially in the Northwest and where we were coming from in Boston. That was incredible. And we are the heirs of those values. We stand on the shoulders of those values, which makes us unique and distinct. And you look back at history, the Greeks, what did they define as integrity? It was truth, goodness, beauty. You look back at the Hebrew tradition, what did they define as integrity? It was the 7 virtues: justice. I actually wrote them out. Prudence. Let me read some of these to you because I've looked them up. Fortitude, that's courage and perseverance. Temperance, self-control. Faith, that's trust and beliefs in God's promises and guidance. Hope, expectation, and confidence. And that there's these core truths to life that I can build my life around. And I'm committed to doing that. That's the way I think about integrity. That's a whole step up than just being a mafia boss who's consistent.
Absolutely, Doug. So wonderfully said. I wanted to explore. I'd be remiss if I didn't for our listeners, because you're the first and only, and I don't know when we're going to encounter the next guest who's been through seminary. And I would love for you to explore a little bit of that and take us down that memory lane of some of the things that were highlights during that, and maybe even some of the interesting lowlights that occurred during that.
Well, you know, I guess the highlights were that the Bible, or our scriptures, elevate the soul. They lift us up to who we can be as our very best self. It brings out not just the individual, but it brings out the community. And what does a community look like that can be the very best? Bring out the very best in that community, the values. When you look at corporate culture, and every company builds their values, What do they usually say? An environment of teamwork and trust. Integrity in everything we say and do. What does that mean? It means I can trust you. You're not going to lie to me. You're not going to cheat me. If there's something that's going on that your behavior doesn't mix with the reality of what you say, I can confront you. I can talk about that. That's integrity that's worked out in business, but it's anchored in truths that are ancient wisdom truths that come from scriptures. I'm unapologetic about my Judeo-Christian views, and I believe they're really important for a good society. Now, you could have, look, I've been in Japan. They don't have Judeo-Christian views, but they do have deep values. You look in Japan, there's deep values around what it means to live with integrity there. Not to lose face, to treat other people well, to treat your environment well. Those are deep values that have been embedded into their culture. And that has integrity. And if you don't live with those values in Japan, you lose face. And that's an awful thing in Japan. Now, fortunately, I think I like our culture a little better, where we don't have to worry so much about losing face, and we allow for people to express themselves freely. We allow for more individualism. That's our integrity in America. That's a little different. So I'm getting subtle here about how you think about integrity, but I think it's important that we think about those differences and we can understand it and talk about those things.
For sure. You had talk about where values meet reality and the economic and social requirements of doing business. I think what you might be alluding to a little bit with values meet reality is sometimes where we have to hold up when we're in the face of something that might not contain the sufficient integrity, and how we have to stay anchored to our own values in that environment and arena. Maybe is that where you were going a little bit with when
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, the Greeks talk about what is truth. Truth is where I can see reality clearly. I can face it. I can step into it. And I'm not pretending to live outside of that reality. I can face the truth. The truth is reality. And I can stand up to it still with hope, still with beauty, still with goodness. I can do those things with courage. You know, in business, when you start to lose money, it's not fun. And that's when you get tested. That's when your values get tested. How am I going to treat people then? If I do have to do a layoff, how will I handle it? Will I tell the truth about mistakes we've made, things we should have pivoted on earlier? Can I face the reality of where I made a mistake and be honest about that? And I think we've all had those experiences where we have to step up humbly and say, man, I blew it there. I really did not see what was coming. And what a wake-up call it was. But I've got to stand up to that and not try and blame someone else, but take ownership for the mistake I made. That has integrity. That's really being a stand-up guy, as they say. And that's what we need in America. That's what we need in business. Being that stand-up person, faces the truth, and steps into it with courage and begins to show leadership that you can work through this, not be overcome by it necessarily. Sometimes you are, but you can actually work through it.
Yeah, you had talked about living a life of purpose. Maybe weave that thread through the narrative that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
A little bit with us.
That's great. Well, you know, if you think about living a life of integrity, I think about it living a life on the high ground, taking the moral high ground every day and how I want to live my life. What does that mean for me? For me, it means living a life where I want to make a better world. I want to know that my actions are contributing not just to my own good, which is nothing wrong of that. I want to create good for me. I have a responsibility to myself, my family. But I also want to have it be bigger than that. I want to have it create good for a world, not just my little community, but for the world overall, that I can know when I leave this life, I made a difference. A small drop maybe, but I made a difference in this world. That gives me meaning. That gives me purpose. And that's one of the most foundational motivations for all of us in life, to have that sense of meaning and purpose, that I'm doing good in this world, and that every day I can add one more brick on top of brick to make a difference. That's what that means.
Yeah, and you remind me, and I might have shared it on this show before with another guest or two, but when you talk about putting brick on top of brick, I often say to my peers, to my clients, the activity of bricklaying is pretty much identical whether we're laying brick, building a wall, or erecting a cathedral. It's just, what are we doing at the end of the day? Where's the purpose?
Yeah. And you remind me of that story with the one mason was carrying the rocks to the cathedral. And he said, "This is an awful life. I'm being made to do this." And the other mason said, "This is a beautiful life. I'm carrying this heavy rock and I'm building a great cathedral to God." Totally different mindset.
Yeah, same activity, different perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
I was wondering, and you don't even have to speak about the individuals in terms of naming them if you want to, great. But is there any examples? You talked about purposeful leaders, and then you spoke about some of the folks that are involved in the CLA network and National Talent Collaborative. What are there some examples, one or two examples that come to mind of how you've observed some of these purposeful leaders fuse that concept into their leadership?
Yeah, and that's purposeful leadership is about integrity then, right? So if you think about, frankly, I think we're all on a continuum of how well we live this out. No one's perfect, including me, of course. And that's important to understand, and that we're all working to excel, to be better, and to live a better life, I would say, to continue to grow and change and enrich ourselves on a not just financial level, but moral level. But let me give you an example. Mike Musalem, I was the chairman, and Mike Musalem, Edwards Life Sciences, was the vice chair of the CEO Leadership Alliance. So I got pretty close to Mike. You could see in Mike that he truly believed you've got to put the patient first, no matter what. That was their core purpose at Edwards. You will always put the patient first in healthcare. What if it costs us money to do that, was the question, where I am actually going to have to sacrifice what decisions we're making in the company because I'm putting this patient first and not the company first. And I'm looking for an outcome for that patient that I'm going to have to change out the way we were doing a procedure, figure out how to do it differently, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to do that. I'm going to make that decision because we're going to put the patient first and always make sure that we put that health of the patient first. We will make those hard decisions, even if it has a financial impact on us. We will treat our employees fairly, even if it costs us. That we are going to, if we're going to let some people go because we have to cut back, I'm going to make sure those people are treated with respect. They're given a fair severance. We have an honest conversation with them about why we need to do that. Those are the kind of things that make a difference. That's just one example. I could give you so many stories, though, of people that make these decisions with integrity. That is taking the high ground, not the low ground, not just self-interest, but this thinking about the interests of the other person and the interests of the company that you have to also protect. So that's, yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that was beautiful. Now, what would you share? You know, we have some young listeners. What would you share with those folks who are starting out, whether they're entrepreneurial, doing something on their own, whether incorporated into a larger organization? What are some of those things that you would remind them that you've learned along the way that they should always remember that might fast track their success?
Well, I would say identify people you like that are heroes in your own book that you want to get to know, and find those people that live life of integrity like we're talking about, like I'm talking about. They'll bring out the best in you. And what I find is that people that have this sense of purpose, these executives that have this sense of purpose, are willing to work with young people. They'll take the time to meet with them. They'll take the time to give back. So don't be afraid. Reach out to those people. Find mentors that can help you learn and deal with your own reality. And then secondly, be really honest with yourself. When you're having trouble, when you're wrestling with something, you're not sure how to handle it, you feel your feet getting slippery, you're not really standing on firm ground, and you know it, be honest with yourself and ask for help. Get with someone that you can, again, say, here's reality. This is what I'm facing. It's really hard. Help me get through this. Don't let me live a fantasy life that somehow this is all going to work out. I got to face the hard facts. Be honest with myself. Step into that. Even if it's really is painful, I got to step into that and face it and work through it. That's what I would say.
Sage advice, absolutely sage advice. We've been enjoying a conversation here with Doug Wilson, the co-founder, I think also the chair at National Talent Collaborative. He was a co-founder and continues to be on the board and serves with CLA, which is the CEO Leadership Alliance of Orange County. You've been doing wonderful work. Obviously, you've brought your very purposeful background, your processes to think through business in a way that incorporates not just the mind, the wallet, but the soul as well, if I had to encapsulate it into one statement.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, tell me in our audience, because there's folks out there who probably want to get in touch with Doug Wilson or the National Talent Collaborative or the CEO group here, CEO Leadership. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Doug?
Sure. Well, I'd be happy to give you my email. Let's use my personal email. It's Doug A. Wilson at gmail.com. Doug A. Wilson at gmail.com would be the way to reach me. If you're interested in the CEO Leadership Alliance, I'm no longer the chair or CEO. Mark Percy is the CEO. Dick Gottenauer is the chair, replacing Annette Walker, who served for 2 years prior after I was chair. And I would be happy to connect any of you in the audience to either Mark or Dick. I'm also happy to speak with you if you would like to learn more about some of my ideas around what integrity means or what it means to live a purposeful life in business. I'm passionate about that, and I'm willing to help others who are passionate about that as well.
Well, we've been having a wonderful conversation with Doug Wilson. What an exquisite declaration of the value of integrity. For anyone out there in the audience who'd like to appear as a guest on the Power of Integrity podcast, just reach out to us. I would say our office number is one of the best ways to do that, 949-955-1188. Doug Wilson, I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been a wonderful experience exploring integrity and the values and how it meets reality in such a purposeful way. You've been an exquisite guest, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks again, Doug.
The information presented in this program is provided for informational purposes only. The information is believed to be reliable, but no guarantee of accuracy is made or implied. Expressions of opinions are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult a legal or tax professional. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of capital. Ralph Adamo is registered with the securities and are offered through Kovac Securities, Inc., member FINRA. SIPC 6451 North Federal Highway, Suite 1201, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33308. Telephone number 954-782-4771. Investment advisory services are offered through Kovac Advisors, Inc. Integrity Wealth Management is not affiliated with Kovac Securities, Inc. or Kovac Advisors, Inc.